Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. In today's video, I'll discuss conception and beyond with birth worker Shamica Frasier. Shamika is a birth and postpartum coach and certified body feeding counselor. She's a mom of 3 and works with an organization called Single Moms Alliance. I got to know Shamika on Facebook. A post of hers at the end of January kind of grabbed my attention. She wanted to spend the entire month of February discussing information on sexual and reproductive health. Some of her Facebook statuses created wonderful conversations with her Facebook friends and broke some stigma around these often difficult topics. I learned beyond sexual health when I talked with Shamika and what sexual and reproductive health might look like for Black individuals. She also shared some of her experience growing up and as a pregnant teen. Shamika and I got to talk about how sexuality and conception and trauma and all of these things are kind of linked.
My name is Shamica Frasier. I own New Birth Journey. When it comes to sexuality, we learn a lot about ourselves, our vulnerability, our mental and emotional state. We also learn how connected or disconnected we are to our physical being. Then after we do a little dance and make a little love, we may roll into conception, in which during our sexual encounters, those same thoughts, emotions, feelings, etc. roll into how we may feel about our conception. From conception is the journey of pregnancy, in which opens another set of doors and flood of emotions. Thus, towards the end is postpartum, when we sit in those flooded emotions and analyze every step to how we got there. One of the main things to focus on during each period is you, who you are, how you feel. Is there support and or educational resources to help understand each other, period, or process? According to ensemble.therapy.com, generational trauma is a traumatic event that began decades prior to the current generation and has impacted the way that individuals understand, cope with, and heal from trauma. For an example, talk a little about slavery and how the enslaved people love and intimate lifestyles were dictated. Their bodies were used as currency. They were dehumanized to a point many had to become disassociated with their own bodies. When that happens, your feminine and masculine essence is now disrupted from the imbalance because you are dissociated with your natural self. With that in mind, generations come from that imbalance and disassociation, and then we begin to preach to them what is acceptable and what is not, what is beautiful and what isn't, and how we should feel toward our body and its functions, especially our reproductive systems, and sometimes we as a whole do not approach it in the best ways for various reasons. Not say the advice given was exactly bad, but I will say it was vague. I didn't know what it deeply meant or why was it being said at various ages. That time made me more guarded around my womb because regardless of how I felt inside, I didn't want my baby to feel it. Which years later, as I reflect back, made me think of how much of an impact our sexual health emotionally, mentally, spiritually, even generationally impact fertility, conception, and more, well as stereotypes surrounding the Black woman and the sexuality of a Black woman, and also around women in general. The Black woman gets bashed for embracing either side of her feminine or masculine essence. Often, and with that, she can overindulge in one and try to disregard the other, in which the imbalance starts playing on her mental and emotional. Black and BIPOC women take more time evaluating and discovering themselves over and over during the course of their life because of how much society and the world and their close relatives, generation near and far, demands of them. The first barrier that comes to mind that a Black individual may face with their sexual health is the connection and comparison of the changes that may be going through and make decisions on what they will like to do with their bodies. For example, out of fear of pregnancy, early on, many tend to put their children on birth control, destroy your reproductive system. Another thing that comes to mind is how sex in many cultures, etc., is still taboo to talk about. Society expects that young Black female to give up and drop out, struggle so hard she can't provide. I didn't want to be that. So yes, things were and can be hard, but I graduated high school still with honors. My child was able to see his mom walk across the stage, even with the world betting against her. Prior to getting pregnant, sex was hard to talk about. I also wasn't sure who to exactly get information from till I became older. I'm 29 on this doula journey where I'm making all of these connections and getting a deeper understanding. The current book I'm reading called Pussy Prayers goes deep in depth about a lot of these things I'm speaking of. The journey for Black people, Black women, or, melanated people, because we all over the world, it can be more difficult than people who are non-Black and non-people of color. It can be a lot harder, especially when you have so many stereotypes stacked up against you. When you go into a space, in the state of Connecticut, we just got granted the Crown Act, which is now where our natural hair is acceptable to wear in a facility. And as well as some may cheer at the same time, it's just like, it is 2021. You know how many jobs I could have applied for or may have applied for and could have been turned away from the door because wore a big fro or extensions or a different color. I can't think of a rule where a non-Black person has something stacked against them that says, hey, because you have blonde hair, we're not gonna hire you, and that's just how that's gonna go. No. And there's still things and laws and all kind of stuff in place that needs to be tackled and removed. Injustices that have been happening, and then in the birth world, it's the same thing. There's still racial bias in the birth world as well. I think a lot of these things also inspired the conversation where I started in February on my Facebook posting about sexuality and intimacy and stuff like that, especially thinking about how many people, and even down to the racial bias of marriage. Black people don't get married, and we do. It's like we gotta allow ourselves to reintroduce ourselves all over again because of the stereotypes to say, hey, I'm Black and I'm infertile, or hey, I'm going through a divorce because I wasn't able to have this sexual language, this sexual conversation, especially when it comes to raising up your children, or going through the phases of wanting to talk about your childhood or your trauma or your sexuality, or what you're feeling or your orientation or your different beliefs. It comes to the topic that we're on. In slavery, women were mutilated. They were, destroyed. They were, ripped apart. Their families were ripped apart. The men were mutilated. So, raped just as much as the women. They were sold. They were auctioned off. They was taught that they were like this big as a person. And then you come into today's age and you wonder why, like, the conversation in a Black marriage or relationship or whatever is kind of like, don't talk about that. Just keep your legs closed. Don't come home with a baby. Don't get pregnant. Like, don't be like everybody else. When, it's kind of like, well, what happens if I am 21 and freshly married and I do want to have a baby with my partner? Like, I can't even really talk about it because I've been conditioned for so many years not to. And then when I think about why, from their parents and way back, and then you roll yourself right back into slavery of why can't I wear red nail polish? Am I really hookerish being a Black gay male or Black trans male or female? That's not easy. It definitely weighs even more. some of the trauma that they've carried is what I've been taught, and try to generalize it where it's in everyone's of color household. But I do know quite a few and a lot that has been like, yo, I can't talk about this, or I can't express myself about this because of, like I said, they carried the same traumas and traditions of what came before that. You start breaking down these barriers to say, hey, I'm this, I am trans, I am an unmarried single mother, I am this and that and the third, without someone turning their nose up or batting an eye or giving or having something negative and hurtful to say about you, or you go home with all these mental emotional pains. You start to really put 1, 2, and 3 together, you really start to take a different lens on some of these struggles and some of these battles that we still go through today. Thought is, oh, why would it be so hard for you? You weren't back there. Like, what are, da, da, da. Because that was my great grandmother and grandfather. That was their great grandmother and grandfather. If you're non-Black, you don't necessarily have those conversations in your household. You don't really have to answer those questions. Me personally, I wouldn't change my Blackness for nothing, regardless of the stereotypes, regardless of what we have faced as Black people. But I still look at us conquering people. We still are making way. We still are breaking ground. We still are making noise. We still are utilizing our voice. Even something as far as this, where me being a Black woman talking about, Black women and sexual liberation and intimacy and how difficult some things have been, or even exploring this topic. But as for the people who battle with having these conversations from the start that are Black, who do want to see another Black face teaching them about sexual education, having more access to sexual coaches, especially people who are in relationships or marriages or of Black LGBT, in those communities, they want to see people who look like them talk about all these different kind of things. There's sex counseling, there's sex therapy, but there's not too many who look like us, even down to people who that are like Pakistani or Muslim or what's like. We need a nice mix of things. So regardless of what whoever generalized as go through, I can find something that I can be like, aha, this person aligns. But this is the world that we live in, where it's a very complex world, a complex society, where you really got to just take the time to really be like, let me check that before I say that word. Okay, let me try to be a little bit mindful. I know lately things have been more sensitive than ever with this cancellation crowd. But at the same time, I do understand that, like I said, it's so complex and so many layers to each and everything. So many years, so many people weren't trying to be accountable. You should acknowledge their feelings and accept accountability for it, because you did it. Even if you had no ill will towards it, you still have to take a level of, all right, you know what, my bad. How could this work? Like, I've been corrected. Oh, I'm not she or he, I'm they. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, they. That's my bad. Is there a nickname that you would like to be called so I could try to address you as that? So that way, I don't want you to feel bad. I just want to make sure that when I talk to you, I'm not offending you and making you feel hurt. If I'm not trying to contribute to negativity towards you, I need to own that and let you know. Think about how you want to be heard, period. And because you want to be heard, you want to be able to express yourself or explain yourself in a way that you could communicate with others. God only knows what you could be bottling. We all want love. We want somebody to care. We want somebody to give a damn. How hard is it to, and vice versa, acknowledge someone else? Sexual liberation to me is embracing who you are from head to toe, regardless of your sexual story or path. It is the connection of all the elements of you in an intense, powerful form. Even for some, when you are giving birth, it can be orgasmic because of the oxytocin your body produces. As we know, sex can also help bring on labor. The saying goes, gets baby in can get baby out. Some ways Black people can heal some of the generational trauma by having deeper conversations at home and sometimes as a teen or child, hearing the adults in their life sexual talk to a sex coach or therapist, talk to a therapist, encourage yourself or loved ones to get connected with a doctor that can have these deep conversations as well, especially a Black doctor or whatever nationality or culture you are. Also a health coach, because diet and exercise plays into your sexual health as well. The more knowledge we can provide, and the more we can learn better ways to approach such topics, the more effective we can be and the more informed decisions we all can make. I hope, my words can help. I hope it does get people to think about things just a little bit different and consider a little more.
I really enjoyed speaking with Shamika, and I want to thank her for coming onto my channel and letting me learn from her. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you'd like, and I'll see you next time.